A few months ago, my mate Nathan told me about a ride he wanted to do. It was catch the train from Brisbane up to Gladstone and ride the inland roads all the way down to Ipswich, specifically on a beach cruiser. Just hearing this idea annoyed the crap out of me. A beach cruiser, why? But that's kind of Nath. He's the king of go ahead with the wild plans. When he's not fantasizing about beach cruises, he actually has a really nice gravel bike from the Aussie brand Curve. So it wasn't too hard to convince him to ride that instead. So I loaded up my trusty Reed mountain bike. We started making our plans, and then in July of 2025, we got going. We took the Spirit of the Outback train out of Brisbane on a Wednesday night in July. It was already pretty chilly, just leaving Brisbane. We arrived in Gladstone about 2:30 a.m. It was pretty nice there, it was about 17-18 degrees. We started reassembling our bikes and we set off just after 3 a.m. After only an hour on the road, we saw a server that we didn't expect to be there, so we dropped in for coffee number 1 in the morning. It had a little retro dining area that I've never seen in a servo in Australia. And Nath, being American, got very excited to see the big boy mascot outside the service station. While we were there were also a few tradies passing through, getting their morning coffees and their snacks, and one bloke stopped and he asked us if we're heading south. Why yes, we are! He then let us know to be careful because that road is full of big trucks and kangaroos. Which turned out to be correct. Luckily, we were only on that section for about 30 minutes before switching to one of the quieter side roads. Once the sun was up, we started seeing kangaroos everywhere. One of the poor little guys in this clip fell over as he was crossing the road, but he got straight up and hopped off.
And another 6 of them. There they are. See ya!
About 5 hours in, we came across the Bulyan State School, so we stopped to fill up some bottles. From there, we went over the road onto our first off-road section of the trip. Unfortunately, we were a little bit early for the Many Peaks Hotel, which came highly recommended by the people at the Boyne Burnett Inland Rail Trail Association. I checked in with them a little bit before we started to see which parts of the rail trail were good to ride. The next signs of life we came across were at the site of the old Golembil station, where I found a rail peg that I decided to carry for the rest of the journey. Occasionally I would drop it off the bike and then stop to reattach it. And then maybe I lost it once, and then maybe the one that I ended up with wasn't the first one that I found, but I ended up with one. From the Golembil station, we started going uphill to the Barrymoon tunnels. It wasn't too steep, but it was that sort of, just the rocks were big enough that you kind of bounce around quite a bit. And then we were on roads for the rest of day 1. After we shooed this cow off the road, a car stopped to ask us if we knew who the owner of the cow was. And we did not. Then we got into Monto for a little resupply and a bit of a sit down before cracking on to the small town of Eidsvold for our first night. All in, day 1 was 230 kilometers, took us about 13 and a half hours. That night we had in Eidsvold, the food was solid, the sleep was very deep, and the next morning was 0 degrees. We got cracking a bit before 5 a.m. Lucky for us, the sun was up after about 90 minutes, and we could start shedding off the layers and swapping out of our snow gloves. Before we got out on the road, we had that first coffee in the motel, and our second one was at a servo in Mundubbera. After our first 90 k's, it was almost 10 a.m. and we rolled into Gayndah. We ended up having a chat with a bloke outside the IGA in Gayndah, and he gave us a tip on a back road to avoid the highway for a while. Obviously, on an adventure like this, you're always torn between, do I lean into this wild encounter, or is this person a serial killer and they're setting me up? As far as we know, he wasn't a serial killer. If he was just bad at it. The little back road was a real winner. It was a nice little gravel road, and it included our first tiny water crossing. After the water crossing, we had another highway stint before reaching Mergen. And getting into Mergen was great for 2 reasons. The first being the chocolate milk that we got at the servo, and the second, it marked the end of our highway riding. Now full of milk, we got cracking down the southern half of the KKRT towards Kingaroy. We knew ahead of time that we'd see the sunset on this last bit of rail trail, so we were motivated to get moving before the cold weather came back on us, and the idea of stopping to re-kit, especially into the snow gloves, was not popular. We talked about it later how we both had the same thought, that if we'd stopped to put on layers, the lack of pedaling would make us so cold so quickly that even with our big gloves back on, we wouldn't get the body heat back. Like, this was a fear that we both shared. Whether or not that's actually how it would have gone, we'll never know. We just pedaled on. By the time we got to Kingaroy, there was only an hour until the kitchen closed at the pub, so we got straight to ordering. After dinner, we had a short ride. It was like 3-4 minutes down to the motel, but coming out of the nice warm pub with a belly full of food, jumping back on the bikes, back in the chilly weather, we froze. It was the coldest either of us felt for the entire journey. The night in Kingaroy was another nice little motel and another deep sleep. Day 2 was a total of 235 Ks and took us just under 14 hours, and that's including all the stops except dinner. We had a little bit of a sleep in and our alarms went off at 6 AM the next morning. Riding out of Kingaroy was really nice. It was rolling roads, then into some unsealed stuff on the way to Nanango. When we got to Nanango, obviously stopped again for coffees and chocolate milks. This was a servo stop. I was a little overloaded because I still had a chocolate milk left over from the day before and I forgot, so I had 2 1-litre chocolate milks. I offered one to Nathan because I thought it would go, a bit warm before I could get to it. And I really wish I got this on video, but that man said sure, and he cracked open and he drank a 1-litre chocolate milk in less than 10 seconds. After Nanango, we got into the hills towards the BVRT, and the riding became so fun. The roads were unsealed, they were rough, they were full of ditches and mud. It was a blast to ride through that area. Then when we got down to one of the valleys, there was this cutest little caravan set up by the creek. It was only 15 minutes later that I realised they had driven a caravan through the chaos that we had been riding to get down to that cute little creek spot. Once we hit the BVRT, things got very familiar. We've both been riding out there quite a bit over the last few years. We rolled into Blackbutt, obviously there was more chocolate milk, we got a few snacks, and then it was time for the fast part, just zipping down that Linville range. When we got into Linville, it looked like there might have been an event on. There was a lot of cars parked around there. Over the 3 days, we saw hundreds of cows and so many baby cows. But this black cow that we saw just after we got through the town of Moore was the least concerned of them all. Just sat, just looked. Our final top-up spot was in Esk, and we were both pretty keen to just be done by this point. It's a shame this photo didn't really work out, but there's a little goat standing on top of an old car with all these pigs just standing around looking up at him. So after getting on the bikes about 7:30 that morning, now it's about 6 PM as we go through Kaminya. Then a couple of hours later, we got to our final stop, the Wulkuraka train station, at about 8:30 PM. This ended the third and final day at about 215 kilometers and just a bit over 13 hours for a total of 680 Ks over the 3 days. Now, while all the trains ran on time, due to me leaving my phone sitting on a bench at the Wulkuraka station, it turned out to be a little after midnight before we each got home, so good job me. This was the next morning when I went for a burger and chips with my dad, and Easy E was there.